Do I remind you of your grandma? We talk a lot about the grandmas. Basically, because Grandpa was usually off at work somewhere. If you lived on a farm, he was out plowing the garden, tending the horses, feeding the hogs, while Grandma was at the house cooking and pampering the children. Oh, yes, so I've been told. Grandma always pampered the children. I can't tell you much about something like that because I never had a grandma. Always wanted one. Actually, I was jealous of my friends because on weekends and especially during the summer, they were going to visit Grandma for the summer. Oh gosh, that just sounded wonderful to me. To get to go to a farm and play with those little pigs. They were so cute. I had visited a farm or two when Mom and Daddy would go for a drive in the country on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. They had friends who were farmers, and they had known each other from years back. So now and then they'd pay them a visit, and I'd get to go with them. I can't remember if my sister and my brother went along. The memory doesn't involve them. It involves me and what I was able to see and do on the farm. And I got to see the little pigs. I got to play with them. I thought they were the cutest things ever was. I got to see the baby chicks. Yeah, one of my sisters, when Grandma was living, my sister Velma, was just a little girl. And Velma was the sweet, kind, innocent child, and Grandma loved her. And every time the family would go to the country and visit Grandma, she'd give Velma a couple baby chicks to take home with her. That was big stuff in those days. Get to take a baby chick home with you, put it in a shoebox, take care of it, and then you let it loose in the yard. And what usually happened after that is the chicken started to grow and it wandered around and wandered off the backyard, and next thing you know, some loose dogs had taken care of the baby chicks. They were gone. But my older sisters would tell me about Grandma, how sweet she was, how good she was. I know my oldest sister told me about going to visit, and Grandpa had a fly swatter. Oh, he held on to that fly swatter. We had a lot of flies back then. You know, they used fly paper, fly swatters, fly spray, everything they could find to get rid of the flies and keep them out of the house. So Grandma would be cooking dinner, and Inez, oh, she was such a particular girl anyway, she would be outside on the front porch with Grandpa, and he would have his fly swatter in his hand, waving that fly swatter. And when he saw one, he smacked it. Yeah, no question about it. He waved that fly swatter around in his hand. Next fly, whack. Well, it just so happened that now and then a fly would land on Inez's head. Well, Grandpa didn't let that stop him. He took that fly swatter and whack. So Inez goes in the house and she said, Grandma, would you let me hide the fly swatter so Grandpa won't hit me with it? Well, she, of course, smiles as sure child. You can hide the fly swatter. So she hid it up on the mantle behind a picture. And in a little bit, she got kind of scared because she thought, oh my gosh, Grandpa's going to be asking what happened to the fly swatter. And he finds out that I hid it from him. I don't know what he'll do. So she'd run and get the fly swatter and bring it back to the front porch swing, lay it down on the swing where Grandpa could find it. Now, those were the little stories I was told by my sisters about Grandma and Grandpa. I didn't have any stories to tell. None. Then, of course, as I grew older and would be in the kitchen with Mama while she was cooking, I'd set the table and get the silverware out and salt the fried potatoes and check, see if the beans were cooking dry, things like that, while Mama prepared the cornbread and whatever other vegetables we were going to have to eat. And she would tell me about Grandma. She and Aunt Rainey said this, and I believe they meant it. They said if there was only, stick with me, if there was only one angel in heaven, it would be Grandma Rowlett. That used to make me cry, and it still does. So you see, what little I know about grandmas is secondhand information. But now that I'm on YouTube, I never go a day that someone doesn't say, you remind me of my grandma. I don't know if that's good or bad. I hope it's good, and I think they mean it to be good. So, my role on YouTube is to be everyone's grandma. And that's a job. Wow. How am I going to please that many kids? Of course, that many kids have grown up to be adult now, but they still like to talk about Grandma. So, do I remind you of your grandma? That's a big compliment to me. And that's one I want to remember. I may not have had a grandma, but I am now a grandma. And I'm not sure I'm living up to the reputation. So I do my best. Now that takes care of grandmas. Now let's go back to cooking. I've been watching Billie Jean. I call him Bill. And it's pretty obvious the man knows how to cook. He simplifies it. The menus are simple. I can't say that I would eat everything that he prepares because I'm one of those people they call a picky eater. Always have been. If the word green is in the item, green beans, mark that off my list. Oh, let's see. Let's say Uh, collard greens. Who wants to eat those things? They look awful, they smell awful, and I'm not going to eat collard greens. I can remember when Mama was cooking those things and I'd leave the house. I thought they smelled awful. Never did think green beans smelled good either. Anything connected to green, I stayed away from it unless it was green onions. Loved a green onion. We're talking about the picky eaters. I was it. 9 kids in the family, and I was the picky eater. While everybody else was eating the fried potatoes, the cornbread, the green bean, and we always had iced tea for meals, except at breakfast there was always milk. I didn't drink milk either. But if you put some cocoa and sugar in it, make it chocolate milk, I'd drink that. And if you'd add a dip of ice cream to it, I'd sure drink that. But don't offer me a glass of milk. Didn't it? When I was weaned from the breast, I quit drinking milk. Okay, I've heard different ones talk about what their kids were so picky about. You know, there had to be one in your family that wouldn't eat anything you put on the table unless it was a hot dog. One of my sisters had that one. Every time she'd come home on the weekends to visit, she brought a package of hot dogs. That's all her son would eat. While everybody else has got the table spread with food, he was eating a hot dog. Now, Jan was telling me the other day that Jessica, I don't know how she got to be as pretty as she is, because the only thing she would eat was cheese. Every time you looked at her, she had a piece of cheese in her hand. That's what she was living on. Well, I couldn't quite picture that. You gotta have something to go with it. But I'd say many of you will admit to this. When they came out with mac and cheese, that's what your kid was eating every night for supper. Mac and cheese or a hot dog. Mine was scrambled egg sandwich and green onion. While the whole family was eating all that good food on the table, and there was always a meat, I was standing at the stove scrambling an egg, put mayonnaise on that bread and my scrambled egg and 2 or 3 green onions. That's what I was eating for supper. So I'm sure you can, every one of you can name one in your family that was the picky eater. And some of them, you think they're going to starve to death if they don't start eating good food. I was one of them. Yeah, I was going to starve to death. But I didn't starve to death because I grew into liking hamburgers. But we didn't go to McDonald's and Wendy's and Hardee's. Our hamburgers were made at home. We got them once a week. Well, this is when I became 12 and 13 years old. My sister was 2 years older and my brother was 3 years younger. So we were the only ones in school then. The others were married and gone. Every Monday, wash day, Mama didn't cook. She didn't consider it cooking when she prepared hamburgers for us for lunch. Well, that's cooking to me, but boy, did we love them. And if we didn't get hamburgers, we got a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. That was wash day. The rest of the week, she was in the kitchen cooking. So I'm watching Billy Jean making his tuna patties and salmon patties. I keep a large can of albacore tuna in my cabinet all the time. I keep a can of salmon in my cabinet all the time. Don't fix it very often, but I want it there when I'm ready to eat tuna salad or I want to fry salmon patties. Now, I've never fried tuna patties, but after watching Billy frying those tuna patties, I knew what to put in them already. I just sensed what he was going to put in those tuna patties. And the same with the salmon patties. There's just one basic recipe for those things. And you start trying to differ from those, you don't have tuna patties and salmon patties anymore. You got something else. So I've got a can of tuna in there, and I just might be getting it out and seeing what I can do with it. I've never made a tuna patty, but it looks easy enough for me, and it's not green. So, really didn't have anything I was going to talk about. I just said Sunday afternoon, I've already had my chicken salad sandwich, and I make good chicken salad. I've got two ways of making it, and 90% of the time I make it with grapes. Those are my basic lunch type meals. Oh, and I will have to admit, I have to go back. A bologna sandwich. We grew up on bologna sandwiches. Wasn't anything any better. Mayonnaise and bologna, and that's all you needed. You didn't have to put anything else on it. And Elsie's store had the best bologna ever put out. Big, round rolls of bologna. They were about that long. Now, this was before she got her fancy meat slicing machine. She had a butcher knife that long and one of those old-fashioned tables behind the meat counter where she cut her meat. And I'd watch her get that bologna out. You didn't buy a half pound or a pound. You bought 4 slices or 6 slices. Now it may start out, when she starts cutting with that big butcher knife, it'd be a half inch thick. But when she got to the bottom edge of that bologna, you could see through it. It was so thin. That didn't matter to us. You still couldn't beat a bologna sandwich from Elsie's store. Wouldn't mind having one now. And sometimes we fried the bologna. Nothing better. Good old fried bologna sandwich for supper. My girlfriend lived across the street from Elsie's store. I was at her house almost as much as I was at my own house because she had 3 brothers and they collected comic books. You know, funny books. Oh, back when it was Superman. And when they had the ghost stories. And, what was his name? came, and his secretary or his nurse was in love with him. Oh, that was a romantic comic book or funny book. I would go to her house, and if it was winter time, they had more morning stove in the living room. It didn't matter if she was home or not. The boys were all gone all the time anyway, but her mother just point to the stack of funny books, and I'd sit down in the floor next to the warm morning heater, and I would read my heart out. See, we didn't have funny books at home because Mama would not let us spend a dime on a funny book. It's a waste of money. We didn't have to. We'd just pick up 6 or 8 of my friend's comic books, bring them home with us. We'd look at those, take them back, and get a new batch of comic books. They had a lot of them. But their daddy was able to get food products wholesale. I know sometimes he'd come in with a big box of green beans, corn, whatever he could get wholesale. And then he would come in about once every, well, not too often, every 3 or 4 months, I guess. He'd come in with that big, long roll of bologna. It was big slices. Now, bologna's just going to last so long. How are you going to eat that much bologna? Well, you fried it for breakfast. Then when lunchtime came, you had bologna sandwiches. You might have a side item with that sandwich. I don't know what you would eat with a bologna sandwich, unless it be a tomato, sliced tomato. Don't mention tomatoes to me. I don't eat tomatoes. Never have. Even during the war, when they had the victory gardens, all of the women were planting victory gardens. And I remember going to my sister's house. They had a little garden out by the front porch. Great, big, beautiful tomatoes. And us kids would get in the garden, and all of my friends and my niece and my sister would sneak out a big red tomato. They were beautiful tomatoes. They'd take a big bite of that tomato, and that juice would just run down their faces, down their hands. Oh, that looked so good. I'd get a tomato, and I'd take one bite, and I would, here, take this tomato, I can't eat that thing. So I never did learn to like tomatoes, but that's what you put on a bologna sandwich. Now, where was I going from here with the bologna? Talking about food, talking about green food, greens. Oh, no. Oh, and Mama would go out in the field and pick the poke, great big leaves. And of course she fixed that in a big skillet, stirred that stuff up with the onions and the bacon grease and whatever else you put in with it, because I didn't eat it. So it didn't matter to me what you put in it. I wasn't going to eat it. Yes, I was the picky eater in the family. Still am. So, if it's got tomatoes in it, I don't eat it. Unless it's a stew, a mixed vegetable dish where the tomatoes are cooked. Now, I would eat Campbell's tomato soup. Campbell's tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich. That's the only way you get me to eat tomatoes, was tomato soup. I don't eat much of that anymore either. I fix my own soups. I've got several recipes that I like real well. My harvest soup is just wonderful. But when you live alone, you don't do too much cooking with stews and soups because I've got this huge ovenware covered dish. You've seen it sitting on my stove. And when I do vegetable soup, harvest soup, tomato soup, she crab soup, it's all prepared in that big pot. And I'm the only person around to eat it. My neighbors have changed. I don't have the kind of neighbors I can knock on the door now and say, here, I brought you some soup. They've changed, and some of them travel so much they're gone more than they're home. I envy them. I've got one neighbor down the hall. I've met her once. She's been here at least a year and a half, 2 years. And she has been gone, I would say, 9/10 of that time. She travels alone. She goes on cruises. She goes with tour groups. I talked to her, I think it was around Christmas. She happened to be here. I met her then, 2 doors down the hall from me. And she was such an interesting person. And I said, who do you travel with? And she says, nobody. I go by myself. I thought, if she can do it, why can't I? I decided I'm going to get to know this lady. I'm going to learn her tricks of the trade. And I'm going to hit the road. Well, that was Christmas. Haven't seen her since. She's off and gone somewhere. And I think while she's on one trip, she's planning the next one. Now that's the kind of life I think I could enjoy somewhat. Don't think I'd want to be gone as much as she is. But it does sound kind of exciting. Oh, and I got a new Cunard magazine. Let me tell you, Cunard is the company that owns Queen Elizabeth II's ship, the Queen Mary II, Queen Victoria. What's the last one? What was another one? Oh, they've come out now with Queen Anne. And Queen Anne has a female captain. I got a big magazine a few days ago, and I thought, I'm always just tossing these in the garbage and don't know why they keep sending them to me, because it's been years since I've been on a cruise. And I don't pay any attention to them because I know I can't go. Well, this one was, something about it got my attention. I thought, I'm going to look at this magazine. And I started looking through it. That's when I discovered the new lady captain of the Queen Anne. And it had pictures. Oh gosh. It sure does make it envious of those people who like to travel a lot. Now, let's see, what was there in that? It was discussing going through the Panama Canal. They had to build another canal. I think it's beside the old canal because the Queen Anne ship was too big to go through the first canal. So they built another canal. And the next cruise was going to be through the new canal. That sounds pretty interesting to me, to think that your ship is too big to go through a canal. Well, this one is the Queen Anne. The more I read and the more it talked about the captain and the other ships, it sure did get me to hankering, wishing I could go on another cruise. But I don't think that's possible. This little knot got up here on about top of my head put me back a few steps. I'm in pretty good shape, but I'm not as able as I was before. And tomorrow morning, I'm going for an EEG, and I think they used that old airplane glue and connect these little rods to your head. Oh, I hope they don't find anything up there except maybe a few good brains. Well, anyway, we're going to find out if I'm going to survive the accident that I had when I fell on my head. Just want to make sure I'm in good shape. And then after I do the EEG, I have to go for consultation with the surgeon or the doctor, whatever he is, and see what they found up there besides a big knot. So I'll be reporting back to you on that. I'm going to go to the kitchen. Now, last night I had grilled cheese sandwich. When I learned that using mayonnaise instead of butter to grill my bread tasted better, it wasn't so much the taste as it was the texture of the bread. It light and crisp on the outside with the mayonnaise. I put 2 or 3 kinds of cheese on my bread. I go to the deli and I order the Boar's ham. This time I ordered shaved spicy hot chicken. I put that on my grilled cheese sandwich, and let me tell you folks, it's good stuff. It is so good. I fixed me 3 or 4 little carrot sticks, grabbed my bag of potato chips, and that's as good a meal as if I've gone out to Ruby Tuesdays. They don't have Ruby Tuesdays anymore, do they? Did you ever eat the blonde brownie at Ruby Tuesdays? I believe that's the best dessert I've ever eaten. You get a blonde brownie, they pile it with vanilla ice cream, then they put butterscotch or caramel topping on top of that, and you'll think you've died and gone to heaven. Wouldn't mind having something like that now. Of course, I could always get Billy Jean to make some blonde brownies. I bet he's got a recipe for one, and if he does, I might find myself making blonde brownies with caramel topping and ice cream. And my doctor's going to say, you can't eat all those sweets. But I don't always listen to my doctor. Do you? I haven't anything else to talk about, just those little bits of things. And I got into my box of cards and letters that I've kept. You know, in the old days, they saved all those letters. And those letters and those greeting cards were what people write books about today. I didn't realize I had a box, oh, about this deep, pretty good sized box, filled with letters. And these were letters from people I met in England and in Toledo. And gosh, I had something from someone in Texas. I can't even remember who they were, but I'm going to get those out and I'm going to go back and read those letters. One of them was a couple in England who showed me their wedding pictures. And they showed the outside of a building where they took the photographs of hydrangeas. Those hydrangeas were as tall as the building was. They spread out alongside. I never seen anything so beautiful in my life. And I am going to tell you this. In England, the flowers are perfection. You don't find any little spots and holes in the petals and the leaves of the roses and the Queen Anne's lace. Queen Anne's lace is this big. Go through Hyde Park, and then we went to another mansion, and their flower garden. Their roses are this big, where ours are this big. I'm not exaggerating. There's not a blemish on a single leaf or petal. Oh, if only we could plant flowers like that. They were pretty. I just couldn't believe that flowers could be that perfect. We have beautiful flowers here, I know that. But not like theirs are. Theirs are perfection. So, I think I've given you enough information. Oh, I had some pictures here. Now, I'm going to do this real quick. I said, won't hurt to show a few pictures. Now, this is one when I was on the Queen Elizabeth II, my first cruise. The entertainers are going to show you a picture. All of you know who Hal Linden is or was. I guess he's still around. I don't know. But I didn't know Hal Linden was also a musician. Well, one night we go to the Grand Lounge, and see the guy with his hand in the air? That's Hal Linden. He's blowing his horn. I don't know who the others were, but he's a pretty good musician. And that was at the Grand Lounge at night. Okay, there's Hal Linden. Well, I don't have a photograph of Rich Little, but everybody knows who Rich Little was and is. He's still around. Oh my gosh, he could mimic all of your celebrities, your presidents, important celebrities. He could mimic them. Close your eyes, you'd think it was them talking to you. So he was very enjoyable. Now, here's another one. I doubt if any of you can recognize this man, because when he was popular, he had black hair and was a few pounds lighter. Do you remember Frankie Vaughan? Well, you got to be as old as I am if you remember him. Frankie Vaughan, what do you think of? Do you remember a song called Green Door? There's a great piano and it playing behind the green door. don't know what they're doing, but they laugh a lot behind the green door. Now, I don't know the rest of the words, but you can figure it out behind the green door. It's got rhythm, it's got rhyme, and it makes you want to jitterbug if you're listening to the green door. Now, that was Frankie Vaughan. Maybe some of you can go back and remember. In fact, go on the internet, bring up his name, bring up the green door, and you can listen to him sing that song, and it'll take you back 50 years. I'm not kidding. 50 years. Okay. Same cruise. Coming back from England. Guess who's on the ship? Robert Stack and his wife. Oh my gosh. Well, the lady I met in England just happened to be best friends with Robert Stack and his wife. I think her name was Rosemary. Well, I was shocked when they said, guess who's on the ship? And they told me. I said, oh gosh, I've got to meet them. I've got to let them know that I had dinner and was on a coach tour with their best friend. So I did get in touch with them, and I did get to meet her and talk to her. But Robert Stack, still handsome as ever, was so busy with all the women swarming around him, I decided I wouldn't try to push through the crowd. I got to talk to his wife, and that was good enough. Now, there he is. I looked at his shoes. I said, you know what? I think he's wearing Cole Haan shoes. Because at the time, son-in-law number 3 had a shoe repair shop, and he sold Cole Haan shoes and loafers. And for me, it's the most comfortable shoe I'd ever worn. So I'm sitting there looking at Robert Stack's loafers, trying to see if they're Cole Haan loafers. There you go. Robert Stack. Yes, he's gone now too. Okay. Now this picture won't be easy to see, but I'll describe it to you. You see the couple here? That is the man who escorted Jackie Kennedy to all of the balls and social affairs in Washington after JFK had died and after she remarried. He was her escort at all of those affairs. Now, the lady standing beside him is his wife. She was an international model, the most delightful person you would ever want to meet. And my sister and I spent the majority of our coach tour of 9 days with this lady. She's the one, well, we didn't know anything about her husband, didn't know what he did for a living or anything, because she was usually with us and he was out roaming around looking things over by himself. Quiet man. So that's me in the blue and white. I'm approaching them. So I learned later, after I get home from my cruise, all about this man, how important a person he was in Washington. He's gone now. Their home was in California. She and I were the only two on the coach that had video cameras. and we were usually together taking pictures. And she was so sweet, so much fun, and it's the information I got about this couple after I got home just shocked me, absolutely shocked me. There's a long story about them, but when she told me their best friends were Robert and Rosemary Stack, and I got on that ship and they said, "Guess who's on the ship?" Well, you know I had to meet him. You couldn't back off from something like that. So I got to listen to him in the Grand Lounge, and he had a wonderful, wonderful talk. He was such an interesting man. So there were the people I met on the very first cruise, and that's doing pretty good. Now the next picture I wanted to show you is family-wise. This was after my oldest sister, Inez, had died. There were 6 of us left. We planned a little trip to Franklin, Tennessee. My nephew had a bed and breakfast in Franklin. The house he lived in during the Civil War had been used as a hospital. He had renovated that house and it was just beautiful. He had stars like Garth Brooks and his crew. They would stay at his bed and breakfast when they came to Franklin. Now, this picture is taken at the back door of his bed and breakfast, and these are the 6 sisters. This is the best picture I can give you. Okay, as you can tell, I'm the big one with the red slacks on. The one next to me is Ada. At that time, she was the oldest. Velma is next. She lived in Tennessee. Now come down to the front row in the navy and white. That's Benna May. We're lined up, no, not in order by age necessarily. That's Benna May. She wrote a human interest column for my brother's weekly newspapers. Pretty good writer. The next one is Jeanette. Jeanette is still living. Jeanette lives in western Kentucky. And the one in black and white is Wanda. She lives in the old home place. So that's the best I can do for the 6 sisters. The 3 who are still living today are me, Jeanette, and Wanda. The other 3 are all gone now. And you can see by looking at this black back, well, it's not a porch, it's steps. The steps were made from old handmade bricks. It was a wonderful bed and breakfast. And so I thought you could get a better picture of my stories that I tell if you could put a face to the names. So maybe that'll help you a little bit when I start. Now, I've got another picture. You asked about my son. This is my son. Am I getting a good... There's kind of a glare. This is my son, his 2 sons, and his wife back then. They're not married now. So Riley is the one in the white shirt. He lives in Florida. Trevor is the one in the plaid shirt. He lives somewhere up in Michigan or Chicago or somewhere. I can't keep up with him. But he's going to be here next week. I haven't seen him in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. So, I'll be having dinner with him next Friday. So anyway, that gives you an idea. You can look and you can see what my children look like. Now, I don't have one handy of Jan and her 2 girls. But I'd have to show you several different pictures to get Jan's husband in a picture, because she had 4 of them, you know. You already know that. She knows I kid about her numbered husband, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And number 4 now is Charlie. Charlie fell. He had already had a bad knee. He already had a bad shoulder. What did he fall on? The knee and the shoulder. And he's been suffering some pain. He's going to have surgery on the shoulder. I suppose replacement. Can't describe the situation with the knee because I don't know enough about it. But Charlie won't give up. He's out there on that farm. He's doing and going and working constantly. You can't slow him down. I worry about that because I think he'll do more damage than he will do good if he doesn't slow down. So, keep him in mind because surgery's coming up soon. Don't know when, that nothing's been scheduled yet. But I'm hoping Jan can tie him down, get him stuck on the couch and let him watch some soap operas in the afternoon. And somebody else can do the hoeing in the garden, which would be her. She's taken a liking to being a farmer's wife. I guess you call it a farmer's wife, even if they don't have any cows and pigs and chickens. She's on a farm, and she's liking it. She's really liking it. So, I think I've talked too long. I put on my old shirt. I'd forgotten about having it, but I just love these little dingy things around the neck. And going to get back and see what Billie Jean's doing, what he's cooking for us today. And I'm going to see if I can't get around to trying out some of his recipes because he's such a neat, clean cook. He makes it look so easy. And I'm not that neat, but I'm going to give it a try, just for his sake, so he can find out whether or not I can follow his recipes. You follow his recipes too, and I want to hear, as well as he does, what you think. We've got more in store for you. Isn't that right, Bill? Yes, I know, he agrees with me. Yeah, he's a good guy. So, see you later.